Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, What's Trending in Financial Fraud? We are delighted to have you join us today. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. If you have concerns about your privacy, please do not type in the chat. Everyone that is registered for today's webinar will receive the recording and any other follow-up materials in an email within the next few weeks. You should be able to hear us, but we shouldn't be able to hear you. If you cannot hear or you're having any other tech issues, please send a message to Robin Evans. Unfortunately, we are not able to give out any certificates for your attendance today. If you would like to access live captions for today's session, you can turn those on by selecting the Show Captions button in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions throughout the session today, please type them in the Q&A box, which can be accessed by clicking the Q&A button in the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. This helps us to manage the questions and ensures that we don't lose any in the chat. We will address questions as we can throughout the session and hopefully have a few minutes at the end for any additional questions as well. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, what profession you are in, and where you're joining us from today. My name is Kim Camacho. I'm a program manager with the National Center for Victims of Crime. I'm joining you from beautiful, sunny Sacramento, California. I have my master's and my bachelor's degrees in social work, and I have a wide range of experience, ranging from working with older adults in hospice care to working with victims of gender-based violence on a campus, on a college campus, and also providing training and technical assistance to victim service professionals like many of you. I'm very excited to be joined by our partners today from FINRA to discuss the current landscape of scams and how to support victims of financial fraud. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob to introduce himself and FINRA.
Wonderful, thank you. So hi, everybody. My name is Rob Mascio. I'm a director within FINRA's Office of Investor Education and with the FINRA Foundation. I've been with the organization for nearly 20 years in a variety of different roles. Spent a large portion of my career focusing on investigations within the financial fraud and financial exploitation space. I joined the foundation and the investor education group in 2020, really looking to be able to take some of that reactive response that I had done through leading teams of investigators to more of a proactive stance. So looking what we can do to educate consumers, educate advocates, educate law enforcement, whatever the group is, about the different frauds and exploitations that are occurring and what we can do to assist victims of financial fraud and exploitation. So for those that don't know, FINRA is a not-for-profit regulator. We regulate a portion of the securities industry. We regulate firms that are registered as brokerage firms. So we regulate those firms and their employees. We are not a government agency, but we are overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they ensure that we're doing the job that we were put in place to do. And our mission within FINRA is investor protection and market integrity. Now, I mentioned that I work for FINRA as well as the FINRA Foundation. The FINRA Foundation is a subsidiary of FINRA, and we focus on increasing financial capabilities for all Americans. And we do that through a variety of different programs and focuses within the foundation. And a lot of the work that we do, it's grounded in research. So we conduct research through the foundation, and we use that research to guide our outreach and our workings with a variety of different partners. I focus again on that financial fraud component, and I manage our investor protection campaign. So a lot of the things that we're going to discuss today falls within that financial fraud landscape in the area that I work in within the foundation. Kim?
Thanks, Rob. And I mentioned I'm with the National Center for Victims of Crime. We are a national nonprofit organization. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. Very excited about that. And really our mission is to help victims of crime. We're dedicated to serving individuals, families, and communities that are harmed by crime. And we do this through a variety of different programs and services. We advocate for victims' rights. We train professionals that work with victims. And we also offer direct services through our National Victim Connect hotline, which we'll share a little bit more about at the end of the presentation today. All right, so before we can really dive into anything, we really have to talk about the scope of the problem. What do scams and financial fraud look like in our current landscape? The Global Anti-Scam Alliance released its 2024 Global State of Scams report recently, and the data uncovered some really staggering insights into the prevalence and the impact of scams worldwide. With over $1 trillion in losses globally just within the past year. So that's pretty significant, and it's impacting people all across the world. One thing that I think is really important to note from this data is that scams can and do impact people of all backgrounds and demographics. We can see this in the information here on the slide, that many perpetrators are targeting victims that are very well educated. A high percentage of them had university degrees. So again, this is impacting people from all walks of life, and many of the people that you likely are engaging with in your work. Another key finding is that a large majority of scam victims don't report it. And there are a lot of barriers to reporting. It may include feelings of shame or embarrassment, feeling responsible for the victimization, or also believing that there's nothing that can be done. And so, as professionals that are working directly with victims, I see we have a lot of folks in the victim services field on the call today. Your support and the way that you can engage with them can have a really big impact on their overall healing and recovery journey. Another trend that we're seeing is that scammers are continuing to exploit really popular platforms and channels. Phone calls and text messages remain the primary methods of that initial contact, with WhatsApp, Instagram, and Gmail also being frequently used. So now we're going to dial it down and talk a little bit more about what's happening here specifically in the United States.
All right, so these are the numbers that we have from the Federal Trade Commission. And these are going to be reports that were made in 2024. And every year, the Federal Trade Commission, they compile information that's been reported to them, and they put out some interesting statistics. And this is the fraud landscape as we know it based on reports to the Federal Trade Commission. So $12 billion in lost money as a result of fraud and scams in the US. Of that 12 billion, 5.7 billion was lost to investment-related scams. Now, investment-related scams, that includes those kind of the traditional Ponzi scheme type scams, but it also includes crypto-related investment scams. So 5.7 billion there. There is over 2.6 million reports of fraud made within the US. The top reported scam were impersonation scams. And we're going to talk a little bit about impersonation scams. It's kind of a large bucket. But those were the top reported scams and have been year over year. So, and again, Kim mentioned it, but it's really important to remember these numbers are huge, right? 12 billion in total losses, 5.7 billion related to investment. Those are only the numbers we know. So there is a significant number that is out there of individuals who have not come forward to report. And while these numbers, they are staggering, it's even more staggering once you consider those unreported instances. Can we move on? There we go. So we often focus on the money, and Kim and I, we just did it, right? We focused on how much money was lost, right? Because those are staggering numbers. Those are numbers people can grasp. We can see that total monetary impact. But what is often overlooked is that non-financial cost. And it is so important as we're working with victims and survivors of financial fraud that we consider that non-financial impact. And that non-financial impact can show up in a variety of different ways. It might look like severe stress or increased levels of anxiety, difficulty sleeping, depression. And in fact, through a study that the FINRA Foundation did, we found that nearly 2 out of every 3 victims experienced at least one non-financial cost associated with fraud. And this is to a serious degree. So that's not just one poor night's sleep. That's chronic difficulty sleeping, chronic anxiety. And these are often overlooked, right? Because they're under the surface. But we as professionals in the space of working with victims and survivors, we need to be acutely aware of this underlying non-financial impact.
Thanks, Rob. As I mentioned previously, people of all demographics can experience financial fraud. And I think one of the, misconceptions is that only older adults are kind of targeted and experiencing scams and financial fraud. But the reality is that we're seeing young adults are increasingly more likely to be targeted by scams. Their average loss tends to be lower than older adults, but we are seeing that they're targeted more frequently. And so in this data from the FTC, in the column there on the left, you can see the median amount of money lost per age group. And obviously at the very bottom there, 80 and over are experiencing the largest losses of money. But then in the right-hand column, those are the reports that we're receiving from each age group. And you can see that they're pretty evenly spread, but it starts to decline as you get into the older population. So it's really important to recognize that this could impact people that you might not suspect. Your well-educated, middle age or young adults certainly can be impacted by financial fraud and scams. And so it's important to keep them in mind when we're doing education, when we're doing, awareness building, and also when we're responding.
It's also worth noting, I know some of those numbers, they look, on the surface relatively small, right? $450. You have to remember that's the median loss. So the individual impact is likely much, much higher when you think about it from a one-off victim standpoint. In conversations that we've had with other partners that focus more on that peer support kind of model, they're finding staggering numbers. So they're seeing individuals that are coming in with nearly $500,000 in losses related to romance scams and different things like that, even higher in instances. So don't look at these numbers and say, well, $450, yes, that's unfortunate, but that's not a life-changing loss to most people. These are again, those are the median numbers.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, Rob, like this doesn't account for that emotional impact, right? And the other ways that this can impact their lives and their ability to move forward. And so certainly the financial component is a big piece of this, but we also have to remember that emotional and mental kind of well-being and impact. And you'll hear us talk a lot about that today and how traumatic financial fraud really can be.
Perfect. All right, we'll move into some of today's top scams. And for anybody that's coming looking for a master's class in these type of scams, we just don't have the time to cover it. So we're gonna go over some of the major scams that we're hearing and seeing, and just to kind of give you an introduction to them, so you can understand them, so you can speak the lingo if you are talking to somebody moving forward with prosecuting an instance or supporting a victim, however it may be. So let's go ahead and dig into some of these. And I know there is one question about romance scams. I'll go into a little bit about how romance scams work and some of the shifts that we're seeing. So stay tuned. We will get that. Somebody else also mentioned sextortion, and that is definitely something that's greatly impacting individuals of all ages, but it is really hitting hard towards that younger population who are online on a constant basis. And oftentimes there might not necessarily be the significant financial loss. There's often the ask for money to delete the pictures or whatever it may be. But we're hearing more and more instances of individuals dying by suicide as a result of those type of instances. But let's dig into impersonation scams. And I mentioned that this is the top scam that we are seeing. The FTC has the information to support that. And it is a large variety of different things that fall under an impersonation. So there are government impersonation scams where an individual is impersonating a government official or a government agency. And a lot of times, again, that's going to be looking for, either personal identifiable information or looking to somehow extract money, whether it's money in cryptocurrency, whether it's money in cash or gold bars, whether it's gift cards. There's often that ask for money. Company impersonations where general companies are being impersonated. And we see that sometime as an employment-related impersonation where you might be working for a company, you're a new employee, and somebody is impersonating somebody else that works at that organization, maybe asking you to go to the store to buy gift cards for a company-wide event. And then they're asking, we'll read off the back number on those gift cards so we can make sure that the other employees get them. And that's one of the ways that these impersonation scams have morphed on the employment side. Financial professionals are often impersonated as well. There's celebrity impersonations, product impersonations. Romance scams are a type of impersonation, right? They're impersonating somebody who is appearing to have an interest in an individual. So again, impersonations are a wide bucket, and they are constantly the top reported scam. So in the next couple of slides, we'll break down some of these impersonations and what they might look like. So these are examples of impersonation texts or emails, right? So you might get an email coming into your email box saying that there has been an issue with your credit card, or there's been a freeze on your credit card. Those are impersonating a financial institution, trying to get you to click on that link and enter maybe account information. There's different types of text messages, and we receive them constantly. And I receive them. I'm sure you all receive them, whether it's, some delivery driver is trying to reach you, or a recruiter has found your resume and think that you're a perfect fit for a specific job. Those are all types of impersonation texts and emails, and we are getting them at a significantly high rate. If you look at the support, so the one kind of towards the middle, that's taking that Chase Bank email, digging a little bit deeper. When you zone in on what that email is that it came from, you're seeing this PGWWIC at bunch of random numbers. That's a clear indication right there that that is coming from a impersonated email account, right? We would expect something coming from a bank to have that bank in the name, but we can't even trust that anymore because impersonations are becoming so sophisticated that it might look like that financial institution's name, but there might be some small nuance, whether it's instead of an O, it's a 0, right? Again, forms of impersonations. So these are some of the texts that we're often seeing, and the best thing you can do is block those and report those. Let's see. Family emergency scams, again, these are types of impersonations. And a family emergency scam works, and it plays off of emotion, and it plays off of fear. And the way that these scams often work, there is somebody who is calling a family member, whether it is a grandparent, whether it's a parent, whether it's an uncle, an aunt, whoever it may be, and the person on the other line is either impersonating a family member. So maybe it is impersonation of a grandchild saying, I'm locked in a prison abroad. In order for me to get out of prison, I need to post bail, and I don't have any funds. Can you send money? Or it could be impersonating, for instance, somebody at a medical facility, and it's a doctor that's calling saying, your son, your daughter, your granddaughter, your grandson has been in a terrible accident, and we're unable to get the insurance card to run right now, but that individual needs life-saving surgery. If you front the money now, we'll work out the insurance piece later. And again, the whole ask is trying to get money from an individual, impersonating some kind of a family emergency. These often are off-hours calls, so the calls come in at off hours. With the rise of artificial intelligence, it is very possible that the person on the other end of the phone sounds like that family member, right? So they could sound like that grandchild. There's, again, that urgent need for cash. The emotions are manipulated, where these individuals, they are trying to get you to operate off of fear, off of anxiety, which causes us to think a little bit less clearer. And there's often that request for secrecy. Don't tell anybody. So don't tell my mom, don't tell my dad, don't tell my whoever it is. There's often that request for secrecy. We talked a little bit about the employment and job scams. I get these constantly. My 10-year-old daughter gets them constantly as well, where a recruiter has found her resume again and has a great opportunity. And these are often scams that are done at large volumes, where they're hoping they get somebody in a moment of vulnerability. They hope somebody responds. They hope somebody clicks the link, whatever it may be. Often they're advertised as high-paying jobs with minimal effort. There's little information on the actual hiring company. The job descriptions are often very vague. And again, they're asking for money or asking for personal identifiable information, things like your address, your social security number, maybe a bank account to be able to verify credit or something along those lines. And these scams are designed either to steal money or to steal personal information. We're seeing a rise in these types of impersonations as well, social media investment club scams. And I don't know if anybody recognizes these individuals. They are relatively well known, probably say financial celebrities. So Jim Cramer and Kathy Wood, these are not them, right? These are not their actual accounts. These are instances of individuals that have impersonated them. So this is not actually Jim Cramer who's saying, stop trading this stock. I've got a better one for you. It's somebody impersonating Jim Cramer. And the way that these work, you might see these on whatever social media network you use. And it's often taking you away from that platform. So instead of talking on Facebook, let's now move over to a WhatsApp channel, which is an encrypted chat platform. And when you subscribe to this investment club, I'm going to teach you how to trade. I'm going to tell you what to buy, when to buy it, how long to hold on to it, what price to sell it at. And if you listen to me and you follow my instructions, we're going to make a lot of money. And the way that these are designed is it is a new form of a pump and dump. So back in the 80s and the 90s, pump and dumps were where people were calling on the phone, pushing low price securities, trying to get people to buy. As the interest increases in that specific low priced stock or security, the price goes up, and then the people on the inside sell, the price drops dramatically, and you have a lot of individuals that invested and they're holding worthless securities. This is that new take on that pump and dump scheme. It's being done through social media networks. Now, somebody asked about relationship romance scams. This is kind of the new twist. So the way romance scams had worked in the past is you would have someone that would connect through some platform. Maybe it was through a dating site or some other type of connection that's happened, and they start up the conversation. There's a romantic interest. And then the person on the other end, the one that's doing the scamming, comes in and says, well, I'd love to meet up, but my passport's frozen and I need a certain amount of money in order to unfreeze it. Or I don't have enough money for a plane ticket. If you front me the plane ticket money, I'll come out and see you and I'll repay you as soon as my business takes off, or whatever it may be. We're starting to see a shift where there are still romantic relationships that are occurring, but we're also seeing ones that are more companionship. And instead of asking for money to visit in person, they're looking to try to teach you maybe how to trade cryptocurrency. These often come from unexpected contacts by an unknown person or a new online friend. They introduce you to this opportunity to make high returns. Maybe it is in the investment space. Maybe it's in crypto. There's often the ask to keep it quiet. Again, that demand for secrecy. And what's interesting about these types of scams is a lot of times individuals, they will invest. They might invest with a small amount. They might see those gains in the platform that they're investing in. Their stock price is going up. Their crypto investment's going up. They're feeling good about it. They might be able to withdraw some money because a lot of people have been told over time, if it's a scam, they won't let you take the money out. So they might let you take out a little bit of money. So that builds up your confidence. You put more money in. And again, this is somebody, you're taking the advice off of somebody that you've built a friendship, a relationship, a level of trust with. So you have that trust in that person. And then ultimately you find out that you have put your money in a platform that was solely designed to steal your money. And again, it's a platform that looks real, feels real, but it is an impersonation platform. The way these often start, again, it's more of that friendship. It's through these misdirected text messages. So has anybody received a message where it's just something simply like, are you home? Or I haven't been able to catch up with you in a while. What's been going on? And I got this one, you forgot your bag. And for me, that one hit home because I was traveling. I was just checked out of a hotel. I was running from place to place. And when I got this message saying that I forgot my bag, went through my head, well, did I leave my bag at the hotel? Did I leave it at the room that I was just in? Right? And this could potentially have been a moment of vulnerability for me because I was already thinking, well, I've been moving so fast, I've been running around. I very well might have left my bag. And the innocent response would be, who is this or where is it? Right? And that opens up the line of communication. And then from there, the conversation starts and that trust gets built. Right. I see somebody in here wrote, mentioned pig butchering and should we stop or avoid using the phrase pig butchering and instead use relationship investment scam? And this is a tricky one. So the scenario I just described where it was the relationship investment scam where you build up the friendship, you build up the relationship, and then you ultimately start investing. That goes by the name of pig butchering, and it is a terrible name to describe what is occurring. And essentially, the name comes from raising up a pig ultimately to slaughter. So you're building that relationship with an individual, and then ultimately going in for the extraction of money. And law enforcement often is familiar with this type of term. This is not a term to be using with a victim or a survivor because that name is not a great name. So I think it's important to be aware of both names, pig butchering, relationship investment scam, romance investment scam, confidence investment scam, or some of the other names they go by. I would keep in mind all of those different types of terms, knowing that they are referring to the same type of scam. But again, if you're working with a victim who has gone through this, using the term pig butchering is not necessarily using victim sensitive language. PII, personal identifiable information. Somebody asked, what is PII? And again, that would be things like social security number, that type of stuff. All right. Support center ad scams. This is another one that we're seeing on the rise. And if anybody's used a search engine and tried to look up, how do I contact this airline's customer service? You probably get a lot of different results. Some of them are fake. Some of them are support center ad scams that are designed where you call in and they say, this is so-and-so airlines. It sounds real. And, oh yeah, happy to change your flight. Can you just verify the credit card number you used to purchase the ticket? You give that information. Again, you think you're talking to that airline company. Now they have your credit card information. That's how a lot of these support center type scams work. They could be mimicking a brokerage firm. They could be mimicking a travel company, whatever it may be. I've heard an individual was looking to apply for a grant and they Googled the grant name and the first thing that came up was so-and-so, federalgrant.com. They clicked on it and they realized it was .com, not .gov. And it was an instance where they had asked for money up front to process and to fill out this grant application. They later found out that they lost their money, they lost the grant opportunity, and that it was a support center scam. So it's important to keep those in mind, the different types of scams that are out there. All right. And I know we covered a lot. And again, this was designed just to make sure that we had an awareness of some of the scams that are out there. And as I was going through, you might have noticed a couple common threads. Impersonations, they were all forms of impersonation. A lot of the initial contact was done out of the blue or unexpected. There's often, again, that ask for payment in cryptocurrency or investment in cryptocurrency, gift cards, cash. We're hearing more and more instances of even individuals saying, that they had somebody come to their house to pick up physical cash, gold bars, things like that. So we're seeing a rise in those in-person visits as well, which adds in a whole additional layer of fear and alarm, right? Now the individual knows where I live. Often there's high pressure tactics used. And high pressure tactics, when they leverage fear, excitement, urgency, it gets us thinking at a heightened state, and we don't think as clearly. It kind of goes back to that fight or flight scenario where we're in that heightened state of emotion. We don't always think clearly. And that demand for secrecy is often a common thread. Don't tell anybody about this investment opportunity. Don't tell anybody that I was put in jail. Don't tell the police. Don't, right? That demand for secrecy is often there.
All right, so now that we have a good kind of scope of what kind of current scams and trends are out there, we're going to talk a little bit more about how fraud happens. We're going to talk about the risk factors. We're going to dive into some of those specifics around the tactics and how that's approached. So while trends in the types of scams might be changing over time, the tactics that are used largely remain the same. So it's really helpful to understand what kinds of things, motivations are perpetrators using to get people um, to engage in the scam. And so understanding those tactics, even as technology evolves and the types of scams that are out there, knowing that underlying, approach can be really helpful. So we also want to talk about who are the perpetrators, and these can range from people that are really close to the victim to strangers in a completely different country. Ultimately, perpetrators are looking for people who may be vulnerable or isolated. As Rob kind of talked about, even, his own experience getting those text messages, and like that was a point of vulnerability potentially. That he was traveling around and, could that was a scenario in that moment where he could have left his bag. So they're looking for any kind of moment where someone might be vulnerable using those heightened emotions or other kind of tactics. Perpetrators can be known to the victim, so that might include their family members, especially if that person is in a position of control over the victim. Their finances, if they have power of attorney, maybe they're a caretaker for that person, or just they have a very intimate relationship and have, access to that person's, personally identifiable information or their finances. They also can be members or leaders of affinity-based groups that a victim might be a part of. So these can be like religious groups, civic clubs, other types of community groups, and the perpetrators often utilize that common interest to build trust with them in order to effectively operate the scam. And their ability to foster that trust is what makes them so successful. The last type of perpetrators are people that are known to the victim can be trusted advisors. So they can be accountants, attorneys, investment professionals, bankers. So it's really important to be aware that it can be people that the victim already trusts and knows. In addition to strangers, right? A lot of these really complex scams can be operated by a large group that are in a completely different country, which raises, a lot of challenges around responding to these scams, being able to address them via law enforcement or the legal system. It gets really challenging. I know we had a question kind of come up related to law enforcement's role and being able to you know victims being able to get support if there is not a criminal charge or a criminal investigation happening, how we can kind of change that. And a lot of it is education and our culture. And then there are some really big barriers like that jurisdiction that can play a role as well.
Kim, just real quick, somebody asked if the picture on the bottom was the inspiration behind NCVC.
Oh, yes. I believe it is.
Great.
Yes, I believe those are the family members that our organization was founded for. Their family experienced a significant crime, and it was through their experience with the criminal justice system that they were like, there's a gap in our country that we need um, a national organization that can really advocate for victims' rights within the legal system. And we've evolved a lot since then. But yes, thank you for that question.
Right. And we've talked about this a little bit, so I won't dig too much here, but we know that emotions play a significant role in our decision-making process. And those emotions, they can be positive emotions, excited, um, excited about the prospect of a windfall of money. They can also be more towards the negative side, fear, afraid, anger. And when we are in that heightened state of emotion, we know that people often think differently, and their decision-making process can get skewed. A tactic often used by individuals looking to fraud and deceive individuals is elevating that emotion and leveraging, manipulating emotions to get an individual to do something, again, that they likely wouldn't do under regular flatline state emotions. And I know there's been a bunch of questions. We're going to try to answer them as we go. We will have time at the end for additional questions. I know somebody asked what we can do to protect our phone numbers and emails. My best advice is to use different services that screen. So I get a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of text messages. Whenever I get a text message from something that either I know is a scam or somebody I don't know, I do the whole delete and report thing through text messages. For emails, I use spam filters to try to cut down on some of those emails even coming to me to begin with. And I just delete emails I get that I know are spam or scam emails. So those are some of the things that you can do. Again, phone carriers have different things that identify phone calls as either spam, scams, fraud, heightened levels of fraud, things like that. I pay attention to that and make sure that you all should be using those types of features on your phone. And I think most phone carriers offer that, and it's often a free service. All right. So when it comes to engagement with a potential scam opportunity, we did a study of reports that were made to the Better Business Bureau. They run the scam tracker database that collects reports of scams. They do feed that to the Federal Trade Commission. And we worked with the Better Business Bureau to try to identify factors that related to engagement. And these are some of the things that we found. Higher levels of engagement also often had to do with individuals that were financially insecure. So an individual that is living paycheck to paycheck, or that doesn't have, say, that $2,000 emergency fund, they were more likely to engage in a fraudulent pitch. And engagement means responding to the email, answering the phone, and having that conversation. Social isolation also played a role. So individuals that did not have a social network, that were isolated in that traditional sense, were more likely to engage, as well as individuals that put themselves in a state of social isolation. And by that, I mean individuals that might have had a family group or a network, but chose not to talk to them about this specific opportunity. And the method in which scammers target individuals plays a role. Individuals that were targeted through online contact often resulted in higher levels of engagement. Now, lower levels of engagement, so less likely to engage, we found that knowledge was a key component. And we know that individuals who are knowledgeable about the scams that are out there, how they operate, they are better protected. They find it easier to identify those scams and avoid them altogether. So I know there was some comments about what more can we do? Education is a component. Now, education is not the only component. We can't educate ourselves out of this problem that we're facing, but it is a component. The more we can talk about scams, the more we can talk about what is going on out there, the more likely we'll get people reporting, the more likely individuals will be able to identify scams. Law enforcement might have more tools to be able to move forward to prosecute these types of cases. So knowledge is a really important component, and having that conversation, whether it's having it with your family, with your friends, again, let's make this part of our everyday conversation. Some of the tactics used, so these are what we've coined as the persuasion tactics. These are marketing tactics, and they work. Fraudsters leverage them. So phantom riches, painting that picture of wealth, using words like risk-free, guaranteed, high return. Social consensus is that concept of, well, everybody else is doing it, you should do it too. Everybody else is investing, everybody in the country club, everybody in your social network is doing it, you should consider doing it too. That's often associated with affinity type frauds. Source credibility. There's a reason Kim and I talked about who we are at the very beginning of this program. We wanted you all to say, you know what, maybe they have a little bit of knowledge. Maybe we can trust them a little bit. Let's give them a shot. That's source credibility. That is using things like experience, degrees, dressing a certain way. It helps build that trust, but it can easily be faked. Reciprocity, that's the concept of I'm going to do something small for you in hopes you do something for me. Anybody that has children, if your child gets invited to a birthday party, we often say you can go, but remember, you're going to have to invite so-and-so to your birthday party. That's reciprocity. We see those often with free lunch type of seminars. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with those seminars, but they are designed for an individual to go to get their free lunch and feel an obligation to, one, listen to what's being talked about, and maybe a little bit of guilt in not investing. So they give over money. And then the last one is scarcity. That can be time scarcity. That can be quantity scarcity. You have to act today, you're going to miss out. There's only a certain number of opportunities. You are one of the lucky few. If you don't act now, you are not going to have the opportunity later. So those, again, are some of the tactics that are often used, again, to play with our emotions. And this comes from a study that the FINRA Foundation did with AARP, where we looked at fraud victimization and where there are certain opportunities for intervention. So we've broken up fraud into 4 separate quadrants, and these need to be there in order for the fraud to happen. So the first thing is the situation. That is that underlying thing that happens to cause an individual to be vulnerable. So in a romance type scam, it might be the loss of a spouse. So from an intervention standpoint, we should be thinking about what we can do to identify those potential vulnerabilities and how can we provide services to address those needs. From the trigger is that thing that happens that gets the whole thing going. So maybe it's that message from an individual or the call from somebody pitching a product. So from a disruption standpoint, how can we really disrupt that? Can we use more technology? We talked a little bit about the technology phone carriers have to identify things as scams or frauds. What more can we do in that technology component? How can we put structural interventions or speed bumps in the way to slow down that decision-making process? Motivation, that comes down to individuals' needs and wants to feel important, to feel heard, to feel valued. So as individuals looking to try to support others and try to drive away those fraudulent opportunities, what more can we do to provide that level of motivation? How can we talk to maybe seniors more frequently so they get that motivational fill from us instead of the scammer? And then the last one is ability, and that's simply the ability to be able to access funds. Again, we should be thinking about intervention opportunities to add more friction, to slow down that access to funds. And we've made steps. And I can tell you from the financial industry side, there are more speed bumps that have been put in place, but we should constantly be thinking about what more can we do. And these are some of those rules that FINRA has put out that kind of touch on that ability. The first one, it's a trusted contact rule. It requires brokerage firms to make a reasonable effort to obtain a trusted contact or an emergency contact on all retail accounts. And that is somebody that's not a power of attorney, but somebody the firm can reach out to if they can't reach that customer. Trusted contact is not somebody that can transact on the account, get intimate account details, but it is that emergency contact. And it could come in play when the other rule that I want to talk about, a rule that provides a safe harbor for brokerage firms. If a brokerage firm identifies an instance of that they believe is fraud, or they think fraud could be happening or could happen, they are given a safe harbor to be able to put a temporary hold on the disbursements of funds, securities, and the sale or purchase of securities. So this provides that temporary moment in time where a firm can say, you know what, we're not going to let the money go, because we know once the money goes, it's really hard, if not impossible, to get back. It gives them the time to conduct an investigation, possibly to reach out to you all or somebody else in adult protective services, social services, law enforcement. It also gives them a chance to reach out to that trusted contact if they need to. And again, it's an important mechanism that provides that safe harbor. So the funds do not go out. Now, it does expire. So over a period of time, this does expire. That's why if you all are aware of a financial institution involved in a scam or an instance where you're working to support that victim or survivor, conversations with that financial institution can be a successful step to protect the money and protect the funds. And that conversation could lead to that financial institution extending that pause, continuing to hold the funds within that account.
All right, well, we can't talk about what's trending in financial fraud without talking about things like artificial intelligence and large language model, machine learning, right? Some of these new kind of advancements in technology are certainly impacting the landscape of scams and financial fraud. So we kind of have to change our mindset a little bit as we think about prevention and response to scams. Seeing online is no longer believing. We actually have a question about what's the best way to verify the identity of strangers over the internet if you can't meet them in person. And this is evolving as the technology evolves. It used to be that we would, tell people, well, as long as you have a video chat with someone, that's an opportunity where you might be able to interact with them and see a real person, right? You're not just texting or emailing or direct messaging, but you're kind of face to face. But the reality is that generative AI is changing that. There are face cloning, voice cloning, technologies out there that are, relatively accessible for people. There's some more rudimentary kind of availability out there for free, and then you can easily kind of sign up for platforms and pay a fee and get access to some really great technologies. It's really impressive actually to see um, some of the platforms and technologies that are out there. They look very realistic. So the principles are the same, but we need to stay very vigilant. And the more that we talk about fraud and the types of scams that are out there and educating folks, the more protected that we all are. So I think many of us are becoming more familiar with artificial intelligence or AI. This is just a set of technologies that enable computers to perform a variety of advanced functions, including the ability to see, understand, and translate spoken and written language, analyze data, make recommendations, and more. The generative AI piece uses machine learning to create new content. So, like I mentioned, it can produce text, images, videos, and more. We're also seeing, the deepfake technology, and this is where we get into the images, videos, and audios that have been edited or generated using artificial intelligence. So it might be mimicking or personating a celebrity. People like Taylor Swift have made headlines because there have been deepfakes of those celebrities out there. And as Rob has mentioned, crypto, certainly is a big component of this. Bitcoin, things, those digital assets are also in that landscape. And so I think on Rob's, previous slides, things that you can do to verify, particularly family members, to make sure that the person that's calling you is the person that you think it is. Having a code word with your families can be, one step in identifying who they are. For strangers or people that you've never met in person, reverse image searches, seeing, is that really the person that they say they are online? Um, do you have any other recommendations, Rob, in response to that question?
I think that covers it pretty well.
Great. So just to give you some examples of how AI is being used, particularly around scams. Um, so in thinking about text, generative AI can be used to create a lot of fake social media profiles to trick victims into sending money. They might create messages to send to victims faster, allowing them to reach a wider audience with believable content. This can be used to assist with language translations to limit some of those grammatical or spelling errors for people in foreign countries that are perpetrating scams. So that was, again, one way that we would encourage people to kind of what to look for is if there's grammar and spelling errors, you can kind of tell. Unfortunately, generative AI is being used to combat that. Generating content for fraudulent websites, for cryptocurrency investment fraud, other investment schemes. So Rob kind of talked about that a little bit. Embedding AI-powered chatbots in fraudulent websites to prompt victims to click on malicious links. Images, you can create realistic images for fake social media profiles, um, in identification documents, so fake driver's license or credentials. Um, Producing photos to share with victims in private communications to convince them that they're speaking to a real person. We talked a little bit about celebrities and how it can be used to, use their likeness to promote products or get you to invest in something. Creating images of natural disasters or conflicts to elicit donations to fraudulent charities. Um, Images that might be used in market manipulation schemes. And we've mentioned a little bit about sextortion, and we're definitely seeing generative AI there as well. And I think one of the things that Rob talked about earlier was kind of that companionship and romance scams. And AI is certainly a component there as well, where, there are platforms with AI companions that people can access, and those are becoming more popular. Voice cloning and other types of videos can be used as well. All right, so response and prevention.
And Cam, we might want to just skip ahead to the resources because we are going to cover a lot of this. So for those of you that don't know, we're looking to do kind of a three session series on financial fraud. So the first one really is going to be setting the stage, talking about the financial frauds that are out there. The next one we're hoping to do is going to focus on romance scams and the experience that victims and survivors have. And then the third one is going to focus more broadly on financial fraud and that victim experience. So we will go into these slides in more detail during those later sessions. So let's go ahead straight to those resources and talk about some of the immediate resources that are out there for those of you dealing with these types of instances.
Yes, and you will receive a copy of the slides from today, so you're more than welcome to kind of look through some of those slides as well. So I wanted to mention we have these checklists available on our website that can really help you in supporting a victim in developing kind of their action plan after experiencing financial fraud. So this kind of walks them through some of the steps that they can take afterwards. We also have a much more robust guidance in our Taking Action Guide. So similarly, this walks you through how to support individuals who have experienced fraud, understanding different fraud types. There's some really good information about prevention in there, and then resources that are broken down by fraud type. And again, kind of step by step, here's kind of the action that you can take following a scam or financial fraud. I mentioned at the beginning our Victim Connect Resource Center. We operate a national hotline for victims of all types of crimes. And so our victim assistance specialists are trained across a variety of victimizations. And one thing that we know about financial fraud is it oftentimes intersects with other types of crime and harm. And so they can help get folks connected to the most appropriate resources and provide that emotional support as they're navigating that experience.
These are a couple other sources out there. So individuals, if you're looking for more information on support for financial fraud survivors, the FINRA Foundation, we've worked with an organization called Give an Hour, and they've put out some really great content on being able to work with and assist victims and survivors, as well as run a peer support program for victims and survivors. We're also working with them on putting together a training and development opportunity for mental health professionals to upskill them on really the tools that they need to assist victims and survivors of financial fraud. So giveanhour.org/financial fraud is where you'll find a lot of that content. If anybody's encountering somebody that is a victim of a romance scam, the fightcybercrime.org has a romance scam recovery group. This is a 10-week cohort where the individuals come together each week over 10 weeks, and they learn all kinds of things to help them overcome what has happened, as well as go back out and live a safer online presence. So gives them the tools to be able to move forward after being victimized by a romance scam. So if anybody you know of is interested in that, that's a great opportunity. And then this is Broker Check. This allows you to look up to verify the registration of a financial professional. So this is a great tool to kind of cut through some of that impersonation that might be out there, somebody impersonating a financial professional. You can get contact information for a financial institution where you can reach out and ask that financial institution questions, but it's a great way to verify certain information. The FINRA Foundation, we have a lot of resources, both on our FINRA Foundation website and our FINRA website. So finrafoundation.org/fraudfighter is where all of our fraud-specific content is going to be. There's a little QR code. This is a safe QR code. You're welcome to use that to go directly to our website. You'll find a lot of helpful information, including we have a securities helpline for seniors. So if anybody is working with an individual and they have questions or concerns that are securities related, they can reach out to that number and talk to a live individual. This is our contact information, and I know we have a couple questions here. Somebody mentioned that they are constantly told that their chances for scam recovery are next to zero. Where can I see facts regarding what percentage of crypto scams are recovered? I do not have a location that I'm aware of that'll tell you the percentage of crypto scams that are recovered, but it is often difficult to recover lost funds, and it's for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes, these frauds, they are facilitated overseas, and being able to follow the money to overseas jurisdictions can cause some challenges, especially if it's in a country where we don't necessarily have the resources or the network to be able to act. So recovery can be difficult. The quicker we identify it and the quicker we talk to a financial institution, the quicker we can elevate an instance, the better our chances are of recovering or stopping the funds from going. So it really is a instance where you have to act quick, and your potential recovery could increase, but it is often difficult. People think that crypto is completely secretive. There are ways to trace crypto transactions. Again, the challenge comes when they do go overseas and they're in a country where we have difficulty following. So what else do we have? This one says, as a victim, I see the need to quickly trace the losses and determine any prospect of recovery. Currently, I can't get that done with any speed. Who does the tracing for victims? So oftentimes it'll be by whoever's investigating that situation. So it could be something that's happening from that financial institution where they're looking into it more. It could be from law enforcement's perspective. It could be from a federal agency. I know agencies like the FBI and the Secret Service, they are looking into different types of cases, and they're able to often try to trace to an extent the flow of funds. But again, it's an instance where it does get to become difficult when it's moved offshore. If you all have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're happy, or in the Q&A, we're happy to take those questions. If you have questions and you want to reach out to Kim or myself after the fact, you are more than welcome to. Again, our contact information is here. We would love to hear from you afterwards. We also hope that you tune in for our next set of sessions, which again, we're going to be focusing a little bit deeper on the romance scam side, as well as the emotional impact of financial fraud.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for announcements for our next webinars. Our next one will be in June, so we would love to see you there. And please reach out if you have any other questions or we can be of any support. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar.